This week's parasha is named after a zealot called Pinchas, Parashat Pinchas. Pinchas is the son of Elazar, one of the 4 sons of Aaron, the high priest, a great nephew of Moses, therefore. He makes his appearance at the very end of Parashat Balak, that's last week's parasha. A young man who decides to take the law into his own hands when he witnesses an Israelite man disappear into his tent with a Midianite woman. Taking a spear in his hand, Pinchas follows the Israelite man into his chamber and stabs both of them through the belly. The Torah goes on to explain that a plague that had raged through the camp, killing 24,000 people on account of the menfolk flirting not only with foreign women, but with their gods, is checked. Despite Pinchas's vigilante actions to preserve the purity of Israel, he is hailed as a hero and receives a divine reward in the form of a covenant of peace. This is related in the opening verses of this week's parasha. While our own reaction to Pinchas's violent act of assassination is revulsion, there seems to be no question about his status in Israel, according to the Torah. His actions have prevented the continuation of the plague that has afflicted the Israelites, a punishment for their behavior. Indeed, in Psalm 106, which refers to Pinchas, it says that it was reckoned to his merit for all generations to eternity, but avoids any mention of the killing and Pinchas's zeal for God. Later on, the rabbis, however, were more discerning, and they were ambivalent about Pinchas. This was a dangerous precedent, they say, taking the law into his own hands and killing a man impulsively in disregard of due processes. The Palestinian Talmud says that Moses and the other leaders would have excommunicated him were it not for the divine decree declaring that Pinchas had acted on God's behalf. While a more recent commentator, doubting the integrity of Pinchas's motives, asks, who can tell whether the perpetrator is not really prompted by some selfish motive, maintaining that he is doing it for the sake of God, when he has actually committed murder? Such zeal is dangerous. It challenges, and it has the capacity to dismantle weak leadership and lead to violent extremism, even in our own age. But there is an interesting contrast, just 2 chapters further on in this Sedra, a story that to my mind serves as an indictment against Pinchas, restores law and order, and provides a model for a different kind of leadership. This is the story of the 5 daughters of Zelophehad, a man who has died in the wilderness. But because of the laws of inheritance favoring the male line, he leaves his daughters nothing from his wealth or property. Just because our father had no sons, the daughters say to Moses, should we therefore not inherit together with our father's male relations? Moses brings their case before God, who upholds the plea of the daughters. The plea of Zelophehad's daughters are just, they're right, says God. They should have a hereditary holding, so transfer their father's share to them. And the law is changed to allow daughters to inherit from their fathers. Of course, being the Bible, there is a little catch to this change in the law, a few chapters on, towards the end of the book of Numbers, their choice of marriage partners is to be restricted to their own tribe in order to keep the property and wealth within the tribal clan. But this aside, we see a much gentler and persuasive method to bring about change, to put right a wrong that exists in law. And perhaps it is in this light that we should regard Pinchas's so-called reward of the covenant of peace, not so much as a prize, but, in the words of Rabbi Larry Tabik, as a rebuke, as if to say, you did what might have been necessary then, but now you must learn to lead a life of peace. This week, my friend, Rabbi Willie Wolf, former Landesrabbiner in the northeastern state of Mecklenburg-Pommern, died at the age of 93. He always called himself a liberal rabbi, wherever he was, whether serving a liberal or reform congregation here in the UK, as he did for many years, or in Germany, serving as a rabbi paid for by the state, transcending the denominational labels. Even when he was with his ultra-Orthodox family in Jerusalem, taking out his pen to write something in his diary on Shabbat in front of them, he never lost his openness and tolerance, his ability to enable so many people to deepen and understand something about their own spiritual journeys. If I have done any little good, he said to me towards the end of his life, it is that I worked for reconciliation in Germany between the Jewish people and the German nation. Willie was a man whose childhood and past was so deeply fragmented by being forced out of Germany to Amsterdam and then to London, whose path in truth was a lonely one, who sought only to mitigate isolation and loneliness in others, to bring people together, to become reconciled with each other. We see with Pinchas that the individual can too easily act without restraint or consideration for the law, while the 5 daughters of Zelophehad, who retain a respect for Moses and the process of law, bring about a result that is an acknowledgement of injustice, but also a setting right of a wrong that existed in the law. When we use our collective intelligence and wisdom, when we act together as a group for good, and are respectful of processes, then we can effectively bring about positive change in the world. The daughters of Zelophehad represent all those who suffer injustice and inequality. They give us hope that when we bring our voices together with openness, tolerance, and reason, then discrimination and prejudice can be eliminated in favor of justice and fair practice. By remaining open, generous, and warm-hearted, our community can be a place of inclusion. It can build and maintain resilience and hope, and bring about our own inner reconciliation and healing, and reconciliation and healing between peoples. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will, and let us say, Amen.